Good morning. Thanks for joining us. Great to see so many people here. I'm told that we're breaking records comparing with last year in terms of the people are joining us, and always happy to be here and talk about mobility. I'll give a chance for our panelists to introduce themselves, but let me just start by introducing myself. My name is Javier Perez. I'm Director of Product Management for Red Hat Mobile. I'm responsible for the Red Hat Mobile Application Platform. For some of you that hear this for the first time, it is about a platform to help organizations build their mobile strategies, their mobile solutions, their mobile apps, integrating with backend systems, building the different types of apps that are out there, native, hybrid, iOS, Android, Windows, and so on. I'll be here the rest of the day, so if you are more interested in talking about the product, about the Red Hat Mobile Application Platform, I'll be happy to be here with you. I've been in mobility for a long time. Actually, I'm happy to say that I've been in mobility for 20 years. And yes, there were mobile phones 20 years ago, right? They were this big. And of course, I started working with the network side of mobility, right? Remember that, something called roaming? And that was a completely different thing for telcos about how to measure that roaming and how to build for that roaming. And then I move on to work with monitoring mobile networks, and of course all the different specifics about the network elements on the mobile networks, working with all the mobile operators pretty much around the world, North America, Europe, LATAM. So it's been a good journey for me, and then over the last 5 years, with this startup that you might have heard something called Feed Henry, catchy name, Feed Henry. And we started about helping, enabling enterprises to build their mobile apps. And yes, people say, well, anybody can build a mobile app now, right? Like kids from college, actually kids from high school are building mobile apps now. And I said, well, yes, but within the enterprise context, in the enterprise, in government, there are a lot more factors that are into building a mobile app. And that's some of the things that we're going to be talking here with the panelists. And the tools keep evolving, right? So we keep adding. There's so much out there, open source already. There's so many options there. So we're going to be talking about that. We're going to be talking about some of the real life experiences using different tools, using an open source within a context of, I have to build a proper project with the proper security as part of this agency project or this government sponsored project. So we help organizations build their mobile apps. I'm going to stop with the commercial. That's the end of the Red Hat Mobile Application Platform talk. And now we're going to spend a few minutes if we can start here with Tom to introduce yourself.
Yes, my name is Tom Suder. I'm with the Advanced Technology Academic Research Center, and I always like going to a FedScoop event because I pretty much sugar overdose. I'm about ready to climb these walls with these cupcakes. They are so good. Is it off? Okay. I think it's on. Are we better now? I think we're having a little audio. Is that better? How about that? Nope. Okay, we're back on track. So I've been involved with mobility. I had a company that, kind of like you, I had a company and we were doing field deployment around the world for the federal government, and mobility was a great solution, except it really wasn't there 10, 15 years ago. It just was very proprietary. Everybody had different kind of phones. But for me, when the iPad came out, what year did the iPad came out? What's the over-under on that? Does anybody? 08, 2007? How many people? 2007, 2008, 2009. Any other guesses? It was 2010. I think you've been in one of my summits, so I might have used this before. It was April 3rd, 2010, for those keeping score at home. So that was iPad 1. So the iPad 2 was the next year. So it's relatively new, and I think the state of where we are right now, to me, is we've done. In the government, we had the digital government strategy in 2012, and now we have this new OMB memo kind of detailing some, we'll probably talk about that a little bit, that came out recently. I think right now we're kind of where we were in 2008, with BlackBerry, except now we have iPhones and Android phones and mobile device management. We haven't really changed our business yet. We're not really connecting to our business systems. We haven't changed that, but I think we're just about to. So it's an exciting time for us right now.
Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Is it on? Yeah. All right, good. Good morning, everyone. I'm Bobby Duffy. How are you? Right now, I'm heading up the enterprise mobility kind of shop. This is new to us in DHS, so I'm coming from headquarters. I was the former CIO for DHS OIG. And my mobility background kind of came from, I guess, a VoIP voice kind of pioneer back in the early 90s. Single number reach, convergence was real big, you know, leveraging help desk people to do voice. So we've seen kind of the, I guess, the integration of how voice and mobility came together. So I've been a fan of it big time. I'm really excited to see that we're out of the, probably a great ecosystem we got really used to, the BlackBerry. And we're slowly becoming out of a container system too. So what does that all kind of mean? So I think we have a lot of momentum right now in mobility. I think category management that Tom alluded to, that latest August memo, I think is going to have impact. I think we're going to talk about a little bit about mobile app and DevOps. You know, there's some good challenges there for us. That certainly that we can see some simplicity and going forward, and also in mobile security. So I think it's a game changer. There's a lot of momentum right now, so it's an exciting space to be in.
Great. Hello. Hello? Can you hear me? Yeah? Okay. All right. So hello, everyone. My name is Vincent Sritapan. I work for DHS Science and Technology. I'm the program manager for mobile security R&D. So all things mobile security, you'll see applied research. This is what I pretty much live and breathe in. Some of the background I have in mobile dates back to the digital government strategy, working on everything from the mobile security reference architecture to the different security baselines that you get in government. We've been doing this for quite some time. I'll mention that, and I'm also responsible for the current, well, I wouldn't say I, but we, on behalf of Secretary Johnson, are working on a DHS study on mobile device security. So that's going to Congress. It'll be public. It should be December 16th. Looking at everything from the mobile threats in the ecosystem, the defenses currently today, the gaps that may exist, legal authorities that the department may or may not have when a mobile incident would occur, and then next steps, like what do we recommend for secure mobility in the federal government. These are things that will probably be a pretty big game changer across the federal space, and so pretty much my background, both in the R&D, applied research, 1 to 3 years time frame, building, secure, innovative solutions to enable the mission, and also protecting the Homeland Security enterprise. So you'll see, the folks that I deal with, customer base, would be all the CIOs, the CTOs, CISOs from across the federal government, even those at the state and local level, as we do mobility.
And I'm Yancy Hall, and I'm a senior associate at Booz Allen and mobile practice lead for the firm. My specialty areas are mobile security and architecture, secure mobile infrastructure implementation, and mission-oriented mobile application development and deployment. And I've had the, fortune to work with a lot of different agencies, a lot of different customers in both the public and private sector, and have really kind of been in the weeds and done a lot of the implementation, whether it's mobile device management, really complex mobile applications with a lot of enterprise integration. So I've gotten kind of firsthand exposure of some of the pain points and the value that mobility can bring to an organization and its customers. So I'm excited to be here.
Thanks, Yancey. As you can see, years of experience here with the panelists. One CIO told me just recently, I just spent more than a year deploying a CRM. I don't have energy, I don't have the appetite, I don't have the budget to start building a mobile app. And of course, that's education, right? A mobile app is something simple. It's something that you don't need a manual to learn how to use a mobile app, right? And that's something that all of us kind of experience going through projects. So The first question for the panel, I guess I'll go in this direction, start with Tom, is what are those roadblocks that you see to do rapid mobile app development? And of course, what's different when we have these projects with the different agencies?
I think there's a few roadblocks. I think the first one is culture. So I'm used to doing a deployment out in the field. I have my paperwork, and I fill out my paperwork, and I go back and fill out my, put it in my computer at the end of the day. So how do I, from a business perspective, having a mobile, and it's not just a mobile app, it's a tie-in to maybe your back-end system that to do my job. I'm doing field data collection. I need to tie back into my systems. The problem is what do I do with the people that were doing the manual entry? What do I do with my central processing center? These kinds of things are a big impediment. I would say the biggest impediment. I think the technology's out there, but that would be the biggest impediment.
I would say there's a number of kind of areas when you try to move an application into an enterprise that can cause it a point of failure, if you will. There's certainly, security and making sure that the application, the binary and the back-end code is secure, and then just deployment and management. A lot of folks, a lot of business customers don't think about those aspects to successfully deploying and managing a mobile application, and you've got just a whole kind of range of security considerations from authentication, what these gentlemen work with quite a bit, to code scanning, IV&V, and kind of those really essential things that all applications kind of have to adhere to.
Yeah, I mean, so coming from the security side of the house, for government in particular, when we talk about rapid application development, the big one I would say, it's sort of everyone knows, is the authentication piece, right? PIV-derived credential or some kind of credential to authenticate. You'll see that, yes, we do have quite a bit of applications that we develop to the citizenry, providing publicly available information, collecting certain information. But when we talk about dealing with enterprise government data, sensitive, whether it's law enforcement or whatever secure or sensitive information, even though it's for official use only type of deal, there's authentication requirements that we have to build. So think about how many government mobile applications do we have that comply or adhere to the authentication requirements. So that's a current roadblock. I think that it would be great to look at how industry does it. If you look at business-to-business mobile applications, it'd be great to have government-to-government. But having that roadblock of authentication is one piece, and it's one of the hardest challenges. I think, though, once it's overcome, then we can actually take advantage of all the innovation, all the efficiencies and gains that we have today.
Yeah, I guess where I'm coming from and what I've learned the past 6 months is perspective. Front-end development's easy. Try to keep that separate than the back-end development on the initial discussions. Everybody wants APIs and forms and content management and push notifications. That's an easier discussion, but your line of business. Okay, what are the benefits? What are the objectives? How are you going to measure that? They're kind of people, we have some business people talking business language. The challenge is what Vincent brought up, you have the authentication piece, the cloud broker piece, and that's very important, don't get me wrong. But I think once you have a better idea from the business, then you bring in the right people and have that discussion how this kind of all works. That helps on the front end. I also think on the technical side, I mean, web apps, an iOS, deployment is rather difficult. It's in some instances, it is. It doesn't virtualize easy. With Linux servers and Windows servers and product sets, harder to find some FedRAMP solutions. I think that kind of draws back people too. But keep the discussions kind of separate when you're first sitting down with the customer or that line of business when it comes to mobile app development.
And follow on that, I mean, are there any policies or any process improvements that we can recommend? Because yes, we have all those potential roadblocks, actually roadblocks. Is there anything that you're recommending on your projects to, improve the process, policy-wise, process-wise?
So just if you look at OMB memorandum, what is it, 16-21? So Yeah, so the federal code policy, source code policy, the idea that, you know, we do understand the types of mobile applications we have today, right? Applications in general, software. And the idea that we want to gain efficiencies, achieve efficiencies, transparency, promote open source. The idea that when we talk about developing any application in government, we're either going to take it from a proprietary and do a custom, you know, difference or do a custom build altogether, or we're going to use open source technology. And the push from, you know, the Fed CIO to the Chief Acquisition Officer to say that, you know, your development of custom code in this regard, 20% of it must be open source, right? And there's benefits to why open source, because with open source you can think about, I can give it to the community, they could find the bugs faster, I can respond to that, fix things, and we can share across government. So when we think about open source application development, if we have, you know, code library repositories that we're sharing and using, we benefit from that. And if there are fixes, we all get that quickly and we can share that information.
You know, I would say that in terms of kind of overcoming roadblocks, you know, I tend to look at applications on a range of complexity. And on the one side, you have applications that have, you know, very sophisticated and complex enterprise integration and two-way exchange of data. So that's kind of one side. And on the other are apps of, you know, fairly limited complexity, which might be view-only presentations or, you know, just a mobile web front end. And I think that's an important concept in your roadmap planning, policy development, because you don't have to go here for the most complex applications as you're starting out. You can, in fact, you know, begin here on some of the more easier business applications, converting those into mobile, and then over time, you know, integrate and develop policies that can support, you know, more complex mission-oriented mobile applications.
Great. So now that we're talking about open source, let's get a little technical here. And you know, let me tell you, we use a lot JavaScript, we use a lot Node.js, and yes, there's a learning curve, but you know, we have all great engineers, right? They get up to speed with the new technologies. So wonder if you can share some of the, you know, open source tools that you use. Maybe you want to start with Tom?
Yeah, I mean, we use Cordova, Xamarin, and we use some native code. You know, ease of use, the learning curve right there, so it's adopted easily out in the commercial field.
You know, for us, it's both in the build environment and then a continuous integration, continuous delivery, you know, the pipeline. And for the build, you know, you're looking at, you know, typically like if you're using making a mobile web app, developing a mobile web app, typically we'll have like a design pattern called an MVC pattern or MVVM. And you can use all these different open source libraries, you know, depending upon the architecture of your application. So you've got the UI layer, you've got, you know, kind of your structure, your view, and there's some new libraries out there like React.js, you know, Backbone.js, and then you've got kind of other dependencies. So there's a fairly elaborate, you know, open source architecture that's really the de facto standard. And then your pipeline management, you know, there's a lot of tools for that like Jenkins, Circle CI, and we use, you know, Jenkins quite a bit, you know, to manage, you know, the workflow of mobile application development.
There's so many tools out there, but really so many tools out there, and all open source. So I mean, that's something different about mobility. For some of you new into mobility, let me just kind of add into the Cordova apps and some of the tools. There are basically two types of apps: native and hybrid. Hybrid, cross-platform, basically the same code you can use. You can build iOS apps, Android apps, Windows apps. For those cross-platform apps, Cordova is the leader, open source. We can see that is the leader based just on the sample of our customers. There are others. There's Xamarin, Microsoft Xamarin, cross-platform. There's Titanium Accelerator, of course. And then on the native side, you have to develop on the programming language of that specific platform, right? So Objective-C, Swift for iOS, Java for Android, and C# .NET technology for Windows. So we're talking about building mobile apps, and we see organizations starting to build their mobile centers of excellence, or, you know, factory apps. So next question for the panel is, what would you recommend to get started with that? And we get that question a lot, right? So I understand, I get it, I want to build a mobile app, but I don't know how to start. Tom, if you want to comment.
Well, I'm going to plug somebody in the room, this guy over here, Kevin Tunks, who did this at the FBI. He works at Deloitte now. He actually implemented this at the FBI. I think one of the things that was in the OMB memo is, who's your mobile guy in your agency? There has to be somebody designated. For DHS, it's Mr. Duffy here. So you need to have, the first step is who is the mobile guy or gal? And the next step is you really got to get your organization together. You got to get all the folks together and really work together to come up with a common set of tools. And at the department level, a lot of the times I think that's where the policy has to be organized, and it has to come out. And I will plug DHS. They have a very comprehensive mobility policy. It's actually, they couldn't post it on their site, but they actually allowed us to post it on the atarc.org site. So I would take a good look at that if I'm in an agency, because I can just borrow that. It's like open source, shall we say. But I think it's more of an organizational thing to get everybody in your organization together. You need to have acquisition people. You need to have the program folks. You need to make everybody involved with it, and then coming up with some criteria, some policies. And I do think that in a big organization, something like the USDA or DHS, you don't have to buy everything central. You don't have to buy everything centrally. You can have some of the sub agencies. Maybe if they're buying, like, let's just say AirWatch, they can buy it on their own. Maybe get a group buy. There's lots of flexible models out there, but who's in the center of excellence? You got to put people on the spot a little bit and get people organized. And I think we're in a stage where there's very few of these that exist in government right now. I think the FBI's done a good job, but I think they're starting to coalesce around this concept.
We look at a mobile COE in kind of like a supply and demand model. A COE is essentially the supplier of mobility services, data, applications, tools, and they're there to service the demand. And when you look at how you would set up that kind of construct, we look at it in kind of classical dimensions of performance measurement, strategy, resource management, kind of these like classic IT domains that I think you can apply as a governing model. And there's a few kind of important areas to consider, I think, around a mobile COE that sometimes get forgotten. There's a lot of attention on development processes, and that's important, but there's also operational processes and strategic processes that should be defined and or integrated into existing process models. So for example, you may have an organization that's adopted service management. So how are you going to incorporate mobility into that framework versus having it be a one-off? So that's kind of a challenge that a mobile COE, I think, is an ideal kind of setup to address and integrate. And I think the last thing that is, I think, critically important around it is communications. A lot of organizations forget that aspect, that it's fine to develop all this stuff, but if you don't get the word out and really communicate to your business customers the services that you have to offer, mobile COEs will not be as effective.
Yeah, to expand on that, leverage what works. We have a cleansing, a security scanning process on a car wash. It's an enterprise solution. We have complete buy-in with all the components. We can quickly scan an app. You can get a security report within a day to 3 to 5 business days, pretty quick. We turn it over to a risk determination official. They make the call, and boom, we're all share kind of that same infrastructure. Have privacy in 508, pointing policy to this process. That gets buy-in too right there. That helps. See what you can centralize when it comes to accessibility and privacy, and a security officer on your team. That will help with customer response and customer service, because it's all about usability in the end. A lot of these are kind of de facto, and they're not within that program office. But we're getting away from program office and starting to look at center of excellence. And I think we can add some value here, building on that momentum of offering good customer service with good security. And last and least, pay attention to Vincent. Have a good thing that works for us. We have the MI5 working group. It's great. It's a working group not only technical, but security, but a lot of these things we're trying to build at the enterprise level and look at a best practice going forward that we can share with the community.
Yeah, so as far as COE goes, we've actually come quite a long way, whether it's the Fed CIO Council's Mobile Technology Tiger Team or DHS having MI5. A lot of times you're going to see with the Center of Excellence, when you first start from the ground up, I mean, yes, you want to build on your strengths, you want to understand what you're good at, where you're doing mobility, but it's a combination of both, you know, your IT department, your CIO shops that are actually enabling mobile and mobile devices, mobile applications, but it's also your mission owners, people who are at the front lines doing it, right? So when we originally looked at Mobile Initiative 5, MI5 in the department, we actually had groups from the CIO shops across the department, had people, mission owners, coming in to tell us, you know, what are their hardships, what do they need, and then actually have that community of practice built around, okay, well, you're really good at this type of app development, you're an iOS shop versus you're an Android shop versus your whatever other operating system you want to use. This idea of, you know, building coalitions and communicating, having regular meetings and building that trust is you know, very important to a community of practice and center of excellence. So.
Wow, some great recommendations here, and when you're having a good conversation, time flies. So I want to ask the panelists just your final takeaways, recommendations in a couple of sentences.
Well, one of the things, wow, I guess I'm not going to get through the list, but one of the things that we're trying to do with ATARC is really break mobility down into not 2008. It's where you have call plans and BlackBerries. We really want to break it down into multiple, I call them micro categories, where in middleware is a big piece. And we are working with you guys as far as maybe being the leader in that space, kind of running that space, where we have identified 14 areas of mobility where they're groups. No, they're not perfect, but it's not just mobility lumped in together. You need to work these different challenge areas, kind of like what we were talking about identity management. That's probably number one. I would say number two is tying back into legacy systems. You know, I think that's the biggest challenge out there. Everybody has every kind of system. They're not going to get new systems anytime soon. So you need to be able to connect those systems into some kind of mobile, mobile interface.
Two things. Be tightly aligned with acquisitions. Pay attention to category management, that memo that went out in August. It talks about mobile devices and services, and we're maybe expanding that scope. Does it include land mobile radio? Does it include Internet things? Don't know. Stay tuned. We all have up to September 28 to either build some transition plans or jump on a FSSI or GS70 or a DHS IT shared-like contract or NASA Super, what have you. But I think there's a lot of momentum right there right now, and there's a lot of opportunity right now to pay attention to. Actually, I think it was just
didn't that deadline's passed.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And another thing is get real close with the app auth folks and the infrastructure folks and the on-premise folks, the MDM kind of space, that three-legged stool. Are you moving to commercial cloud for office productivity? That's a good time right there, an opportunity to get together. What does that use scenario look like when it comes to mobile? What does that dual factor look like when it comes to the cloud? Like what Vincent's saying right now, we just touched a service by enabling a certificate onto a device. That's all we did right now. We have a whole lot of usability issues we got to look at now before we could take this out of pilot and into production.
Yeah, so I can sort of say whatever I want, right? I'll say that if I'm addressing both industry and government folks, I'll say that one, look at the DHS study on mobile device security. Comes out December 16th. This is something where you're going to identify the threats in the mobile ecosystem. Look at current defenses that are there, recommendations on how to secure government use of mobile devices and applications and the network. So look at what's going forward. That'll be public. And the other one is DHS S&T has a mobile application security R&D program. We'll hopefully be awarding in May. I don't get in trouble for saying that. It's already gone through Industry Day. We're going through the process, so I can't talk about it too much. But the idea is we're actually looking to build in security through the entire mobile application lifecycle management piece. We're looking at, standardizing and automating security tools for mobile application development so that you can just do your mobile app development piece and the security portion is taken care of for you. So we do this, you know, we partner with whether it's the DoD, NSA, or DHS, the family, Department of Justice, GSA, even. I mean, we work with those customer bases because we're here to enable the mission. So.
Looks like we have like 10 seconds. Yancey has the last word.
Go mobile. No, I mean, just I guess real quickly, if you haven't already developed it, you know, a first starting point is a mobile strategy, architecture, and roadmap. You know, that's kind of your stage one, and I think it's important that you can crawl before you walk. You don't have to spend millions of dollars to derive value. You can begin with kind of, you know, stepping stones and kind of feel your way into the realm of mobility. And I think kind of the last area that I think gets overlooked sometimes, or a lot of times, is around this area of product management, service design, and UX. You know, just coming up and conceiving of mobile applications and mobile business models is actually quite difficult. And that's where that kind of discipline can really help to define those use cases, work with business customers to define what should be mobile enabled, what systems should be developed for mobile applications.
Well, thank you very much, and go mobile.
Go mobile.